Welcome to the Digital Marketing Insights podcast, brought to you by Brightside Digital.
Hi everyone, welcome to the show. I'm delighted to say we have Luke with us today, who's a business director. How you doing, Luke?
Good, Tom. How are you? A bit cold now with the frost and stuff coming in, but
Yeah, the
all
cold
good on my end.
snaps here, isn't it? Yeah.
That's it. That's it.
Luke, can you first of all tell us your career to date and your journey so far, please?
Of course, yes. So my name is Luke Wilson. I am a business director for WiredCo, actually a company based in Sydney, where I lived for a few years, and I'm now back home in Ireland, helping to grow the business this side of the world. So I guess a brief kind of history of how I got to this position. Started off in CIT, or MTU as it is now, studying marketing. Had a very keen interest about social, digital. Obviously, at the time, there was a kind of explosion, I guess, in terms of what was happening from a digital perspective. Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, all hugely taking off. I think digital marketing and digital advertising at the time was very in its infancy. So it was really good to kind of get in on the ground floor of that. When I finished up in CIT, I got a position in a marketing agency in Ballincollig as actually as a social community manager, and then on to a social media specialist. So again, working with a lot of Irish brands and kind of well-known brands like Ford, Corona, that type of thing. So it was really good to get experience of some household names at that point in my career. From there, then I moved on to Musgrave, which I absolutely loved. I was there for 4 years, so working with iconic Irish brands, obviously Centra and SuperValu, helping to grow their digital activity and just to really refine the strategies and the way that we kind of went about from an online perspective. So great time there, a lot of great people still working there that I'd be quite close to. So only good things to say about Musgrave. Then I moved to Australia, so I took the jump to Australia late in 2019 with my partner, and started working for the fantastic WiredCo. I think I know a lot of people say about the places they work, it's different to other places, but Wired truly is different. They really have a focus on people and the well-being of their employees. I think is first and foremost. There's a lot of kind of initiatives that help support people with when times are tough and all that type of thing. So it's a really fantastic place to work. Very fun company to work for, and working with some huge global brands and some really, really well-known big clients as well is fantastic. So with Wired, I've been primarily performance-driven, and that's kind of where my passion is. So from a social perspective, really driving clients' performance across social and helping them kind of shape their strategies and change up strategies when we feel that the market is changing and feel like the kind of different offerings are changing as well. So that's kind of where I got to date in Australia. Then I obviously moved back to Ireland, continued to work for Wired, which was fantastic. Obviously, I loved working with the guys over there and helping to grow the business on this side of the world. So at the moment, based in Ireland, obviously. Luckily, a few of our brands that we worked with, we got kind of a remit to look after their more of their global offerings. So the likes of RM Williams, which is a hugely iconic Australian kind of footwear and clothing brand, is probably the most iconic Australian clothing brand like that. You know, it's so well known over there. But they have, or we've been executing their kind of UK, US, Canada, and EU activities. So all their digital activities, along with AU and NZ as well. So very busy, as you can tell. I'm still kind of working on some of the Australian stuff, but also, like I said, working to grow the business from this side of the world as well. So a lot going on, but that's
brilliant. Yeah, you're wearing those two kind of hats now at the moment, Luke. You're transitioning to someone that's getting leads and building out new relationships, as well as obviously actioning your social work.
Exactly.
I suppose the first thing I'd love to ask you is kind of campaign work and how you structure that side of things, and obviously you're growing a big brand from Australia in other parts of the world. Do you have separate social accounts for that? Do you merge it all into one? Do you try and be cultural depending on the country or things like that? How do you operate such big things like that?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's something that obviously had to be greatly considered when we started to take on more of the global brands. There's no point, and especially not even just kind of socially the things that will work, or culturally the things that will work, but you also need to consider the different seasons. So obviously in Australia at the moment they're in the height of summer. I was there a couple of weeks ago for a flying visit, and it's sunny blue skies, whereas this part of the world, as we mentioned at the start, is absolutely freezing. So you can't really just translate the content and the tone of voice and everything that you're running from a Australia, New Zealand perspective, and then kind of just copy and paste that into the European market. It just doesn't work. So yes, from that perspective, the campaigns are all structured separately. So we have one ad account primarily for that, but they are structured in a way that we have it broken down by objective, by market, and by region, that type of thing. So it looks for someone, I guess, who wouldn't be used to being inside the different ads platforms, it may look very overwhelming, but for people like us who are in their day to day, really understand what's going on in the likes of Meta, Reddit, Snapchat, TikTok, all those ads platforms, it's second nature to us. So there's a lot of complexity, and it does take a while to maybe get the point across as to why we need all that, but it's definitely worth it, and we do see the results coming through really strongly. So it's definitely the right approach, I think, to have things set up for the right region. There's no, like I said, there's no point in copy and pasting. It's a totally different world than it would have been, let's say, even 5 or 6 years ago, where that may have worked across social. Now you do, or across digital in general. Now you do have to be a lot more savvy in what you do, and really kind of take in the end user and how they're going to engage with the campaigns that you're putting out there.
Yeah. And is there any campaign work that you're really proud of? Something, you could talk about engagement or growth or follower growth or anything, but anything you're really proud of that you've done in your career at any point?
Yes, totally. So one of our biggest clients, and I guess one of our longest clients as well, which shows the kind of quality of the work and the results that have been consistently driven, is Pizza Hut in Australia. So they have 200 plus, 250 plus locations across the country. Very big operation, obviously, and there's a lot of competitors in that space. So you think the likes of McDonald's, Domino's, Burger King, all those different QSRs are competing for pretty much the same audience. So it's obviously a very competitive market. We do consistently need to meet high targets, which thankfully we tend to get there, which is really good. But one campaign in particular that really stands out is a campaign that we ran during the Olympics called Pizzas for Podiums. So this was no real small challenge. Again, we had, at the time of year, we had very high targets to meet. And obviously with the Olympics, it's a massive global event. There's a lot of talkability, opportunity for huge reach and that type of thing. But as you can imagine, a conventional approach of partnerships would cost a lot of money for the brand, and it's just something that wasn't in the budget at the time. So we had to find a way, I guess, to circumnavigate that and to really kind of cut through the noise and to make Pizza Hut relevant, I guess, in a time where there was a lot of activity and a lot of brands were being kind of big and bold online. So we basically came up with a campaign, as I mentioned, Pizzas for Podiums, and it was a way for us to get into the conversation without, we followed. It was funny, actually. We had to be very tight on the creative copy, everything. We obviously couldn't be mentioning Olympics. There was a lot of different things we had to keep in mind. It had to be clever, but also quite direct as to what we were doing. So basically what we were doing was the more medals that Australian Olympians won, the more pizzas were given away. So again, the idea in its purest essence is quite simple, but there was a lot of kind of red tape and things to jump through to make sure that we actually could run with this. And thankfully it worked really, really well. So it increased, first of all, it increased Pizza Hut sales during the period by a whopping 52%. So obviously there was free pizzas given away, but the actual bottom line, the actual sales that were driven during that time period was a huge increase. And again, it's something that it sets kind of the standard for different campaigns that we run now. It elevated our brand consideration by 22%. So again, that's a huge achievement, especially during such a short time frame. I'll probably speak to it a bit more later, but the importance of branding in general and not kind of focusing your efforts on short, quick fixes. So to see brand consideration jump by that much was really good from our perspective. And we also doubled brand search volumes during the period as well. So brand search went up by 118% during the time. So the amount of people searching for Pizza Hut, it was absolutely incredible. Website sessions increased by 356%. You know, it was really just a campaign that people got and people engaged with. And again, we had to, like I mentioned a couple of times, the Olympic Committee did complain. So they did send us a message, but again, they didn't really have anything to go on because we hadn't violated any terms of usage or anything like that. You know, we were, again, very, very careful with the phrases we used, terminology, the assets, everything. Nothing was branded at all, Olympics. But just to give you one example of how we're a bit more kind of tongue in cheek with it. So out of the potential 280,000 pizzas that we gave away, we had to find a way to visualize that, I guess, to our audience. So obviously we were doing a lot of off-page and ad activity. But from an on-page perspective, we created an asset that showed it would take 325 pizzas to cover a tennis court. So again, we showed kind of the volume of courts that it would take then to show the 280,000 pizzas. But we just happened to schedule that post to go out at a time where the Australian Olympic tennis team were competing. Not saying that was done on purpose or anything, but it was just a happy coincidence. And again, look, that did really well. Absolute tons of engagement, as you can imagine. So things like that. Yeah, that campaign, that's won an absolute host of awards for us. And I think that's even led to things like last week, for example, we took home 3 awards at the Campaign Asia Pacific 2022 awards, one for Content Agency of the Year, one for Social Agency of the Year, and one for Specialist Agency of the Year. So they were really huge recognition, I guess, for the work that we've done over the past couple of years. And just the kind of place we are now as a business. It's in a really healthy position.
Love that. Yeah. And there's so much value in that part there, Luke.
Yes.
But
yeah.
I suppose the first thing that jumped out at me is your reporting and how you do that. And you mentioned brand consideration stuff. Yeah. Is there any kind of softwares or reporting tools that you'd want to share with people that might be trying to understand what that means and how they can do it themselves?
Yeah, totally. So we do have a lot of, I guess, as many marketers have, we have a lot of different platforms that help us, I guess, analyze what's working, what's not working, and then also kind of look for new avenues that we can explore, maybe new, little nuggets of conversations that are happening online that may help us speak in a different way or maybe push a different type of product, a different range or something. So I guess just to start off with, like, social listening platforms, we've used quite a few over the years. The likes of Falcon, Meltwater, Brandwatch, even Hootsuite to an extent, I guess, can be super beneficial. I imagine a lot of the people listening will understand what social listening platforms are, but they do give you a kind of earshot of the general consensus of what's happening online. So you can obviously put in different keywords, different phrases, terms, brand names, that type of thing, and see the kind of feelings and the sentiment around those brands. So for us, again, like, there might be a certain product goes out, for example, there may be a new vegan range or something like that, and we might just want to see what the actual sentiment is like about that. So again, you can do different parameters, different filters, and from that we can see, okay, there's certain products that people are not really as receptive to, so that can help us in terms of maybe removing that from a creative or focusing a bit more on a different product that we know is doing a bit better. So that's like a very brief social listening, how we kind of go into that. We do have a in-house kind of service as well called Wiretapped, and again, that's something that we'll do when we're bringing new clients on board, or when we have a new campaign, like, for example, like the Olympics or the Pizza Hut podiums, I should say, where we will actually go out and gain kind of new information. So there may not already be a campaign that's on the table. We may, spot something, and we'll dig right down into that through, again, the different softwares that we use, like the listening platforms, even to an extent the ads managers themselves. So I don't think digital marketers or performance marketers, I guess, is what we'd be, or what I'd be in essence. But I don't think that they use the ads platforms themselves as much as they can, or don't take advantage of it. The likes of, I know everybody, I guess, is used to meta ads, but we do have a lot of activity on Reddit, which again a lot of people aren't really used to, and aren't used to how the platform works and how ads are served on that platform. Also, Snapchat, TikTok, LinkedIn. But these actual ads platforms or ads managers do give an absolute ton of valuable information. So you get, really in-depth analysis of audiences, so the type of people that are engaging with your content, which demographics are more likely to click on a certain ad compared to a different one. So things like that, again, we're constantly in. We also use Supermetrics and Data Studio. So again, this is a way for us to analyze our campaigns. So it really is a place where we can get all of our data in one. It pulls in from all the different avenues that we have. So whether that's our paid search campaigns, display campaigns, or again, all the social activities or Spotify or whatever we're running at the time. It really kind of pulls into one place. And from there, then we can, compare and look at, okay, this version of this ad performed better. Why was that the case? And then we can see, okay, the copy that was used, we kind of front loaded the top of the message with big, strong price point, name of the range, maybe a couple of emojis to make it stand out a bit more. Whereas the second version was a bit more descriptive as to what we were doing, and that didn't perform as well. So we can look at things that way as well. But what I would recommend again to people listening is have a look at the ads platforms that you're using, because I can guarantee there's a certain tab that you've never clicked on. I think a lot of times you go into autopilot when you go into those different ads managers. And there's definitely opportunities there for you to kind of develop what you're doing and to get a better understanding of how users engage with your ads.
And tell me, Luke, how do you go about staying ahead of the curve, staying up to date with? There's so many changes in social,
Oh, massively, yeah.
And I suppose Google and the bigger thing, I suppose, like, just to give you an example, this morning the first thing I've heard is there's testing in Google in the US where they're doing infinite scroll on search, which kind of opens up a whole new thing, because it was all about being on the first page, but now the bottom of the first page will blend in with the second page, I suppose, with infinite scroll.
No, there is no first page, yeah.
So how do you stay up to date with all these? What areas and what sources do you use?
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of times with the likes of the big players, so Google's or Facebook's or YouTube, if you're actually in those platforms, you tend to notice the changes before they're actually publicized. I think maybe you've come across that too before. I've noticed on a number of occasions that I've gone into different ads platforms and seen, hey, this looks a bit different to yesterday. What's the change here? What are these guys doing? And then I'll see an article in the coming kind of days or weeks about it, or our agency reps will kind of reach out to us and give us an update where we already have implemented different changes. But when it comes to actually getting new information or staying ahead of the curve, I do listen to a lot of podcasts. So obviously working throughout the day, it's easy to throw in different podcasts and stuff. One, I guess, that you'd probably be very familiar with would be the Social Media Marketing Podcast. I think those guys are absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Always have great guests on. They do. It's not just, I guess, social that they look at. They look at things like, metaverse, Web3. Like, they kind of go into a lot of detail about new technologies for digital people in general. I think that's a really beneficial one. And for people who are in our industry who don't listen to that, I would highly recommend it. You do get, again, case studies. They have really good guests who talk about how they helped their brands to grow and how they kind of looked at things from a different perspective, and also, again, give you the actual updates. Their newsletter as well is very good. So they drop a newsletter which highlights the key updates across the digital world. As well as that, so I obviously would be subscribed to all the main kind of digital publications. Things like AdWorld is really good. I think they, again, have a lot of great articles. So jump onto that website quite regularly and check out what's going on there. The Drum, so the Drum obviously is quite a well-known publication as well, and yeah, just getting kind of insights from different avenues as well. I think it's important not just to get your info from one place.
Yeah.
So to read different journalists and different contributors, their takes on things, as well as obviously getting the platforms themselves. So all of the different, like I mentioned, Googles and YouTube and um, Facebook, whatever it is, I'll often get those updates in my inbox as well. But it's good, I guess, to reach out to other places. I think in general, I also listen to Diary of CEO. I know it's a bit off topic, but it does help with ensuring that standards are kept to a very high level. So hearing from people, maybe again in different industries, but who are very successful, helps us to ensure that the service that we are providing to our clients is absolute top of the range. I think that's proven by the first of all longevity of some of the clients that we've had, and also a lot of the huge wins that we've had over the past few years. But yeah, in general, again, I think podcasts are a massive source of information. Obviously, the Digital Marketing Insight Show is one that has probably come across my desk in the past 6 or 8 months. So listening to you quite regularly now, Tom, and hearing some people who I've worked with in the past from other agencies and other businesses is really good on that to get their insight too.
Yeah. Well, and it nicely leads on to the next thing about yourself, Luke. What are you interested in or working or upskilling in
Mm-hmm.
at the moment?
I think like I primarily am a performance marketer. My skills would be to help grow businesses and then ensure that they are getting a great return on their output. But I guess in future, or kind of what I'm hoping to lean a bit more into is actually the creative side of things. And I'll probably touch on this a little bit more in a bit, but I think creative has never been more important than it is now. It's not a case of, as it was maybe 5 or 6 years ago, of getting your classic TV ad, cutting it to social, and then cutting it to a story, or even if you have a bespoke social or feed post and you're just cutting that to your story, it doesn't necessarily work. People don't work in that way, and I think content needs to make users actually watch, and I mean actually in bold and underlined. I think we have this perception of knowing or feeling that we know what people will like and what will do quite well, but in essence there is a lot of content that should do much better. And I think again the kind of platforms and the software that I've touched on above help us to understand what works and what doesn't work. But content, I think, has a huge part to play in everything we do. And I think for quite a bit, maybe digital has coasted a bit with content and maybe not given it enough time. But for example, in a couple of or a while back, I saw that the top downloaded apps in November across all the different app stores. Obviously, TikTok is right at the top of all those. It still is. It's still like growing massively. But interestingly, CapCut was in the top 5 of all the app stores as well.
Wow.
So I think that shows us that people aren't just consuming content, that people are wanting to create content. And whether you like it or not, everybody is a content creator. For example, you can take like a tourism brand or someone in the tourism industry. Like people who go to these types of places or do these type of adventure activities tend to create content when they're there. It's something that's exciting, something that's engaging, something that they can connect with other people about. And how often do we see these type of brands, sharing user generated content? Like it's free content to them. They don't need to go out and create something that's highly polished. To be honest, we see that doesn't necessarily work. I'm not going to say anymore, but as well as it once did. It has its place to some degree across the digital channels, but when it comes to social in particular, I guess you need to ensure that the audience you're speaking to are getting content that they like to see. They don't want to be taking things as ads. And I think, when brands kind of partner with content creators, and again, I say content creators rather than influencers because I think there's a big difference there. It's important that we find the right content creator who matches our brand values, who is coming from the same place that we are, and giving them a bit of autonomy in terms of letting them create the content. I think when you see these content creators and it's clearly scripted, it's clearly off what they currently do or what they do in their feeds, it doesn't really, really work. And I think that's something that's really exciting. It's obviously coming from a performance side of things. I have worked across content and creative and stuff across the many years of my career to date, but it's something that I definitely want to, like I said, lean a bit more into and really kind of understand why things are changing the way they are, I guess, and why users are creating content in a certain way. Obviously, lo-fi content at the moment is doing really well across the likes of TikTok, but again, for a more traditional social channel, if you want to call it that, like Facebook, we see content works a bit different on that platform. So I know Facebook are constantly trying to kind of copy and reskin what other platforms are doing. So no doubt we'll see more updates on the platform over the next year or so. But yeah, I think personally, content is an area that I would love to get a bit more involved in, let's say.
And the digital industry as a whole, is there anything that really excites you? Any new tech that you think is going to be quite big for the industry?
Yeah, I think I guess we could kind of speak all day about like metaverse and that type of thing. That's really exciting. I think since that's been brought up in the conversation, and I think brands do need to embrace it a bit. I think it obviously can be quite daunting, given that it's totally different to anything that we've experienced before. And to be honest, look, I guess probably the jury might be a bit out on how it will work, or how this will actually be used by consumers. Will people find a way to get acclimatized to virtual reality and augmented reality and all that type of thing. But it's definitely something I think that brands should be keeping at least an eye on and having some sort of plan as it advances. We've seen the likes of, there's been demos of how supermarkets will look on the metaverse, and kind of really interesting things like that, where people again don't have to leave the comfort of their home but can still experience what's going on. That would be kind of one thing I think that everybody needs to be aware of, and everyone needs to at least consider, I guess, constantly as it evolves. These things evolve quite rapidly, so it is important for us to keep an eye on that. As I mentioned, kind of content creation in general is something that will continue to explode. I know it's been huge in 2021, 2022, but I think over the next year or so, it's going to be even bigger. And we're definitely going to see those type of apps that help users to create their own content right at the top of the app stores. I know I kind of touched on this, I think, at the very top of our conversation, but one thing to keep in mind is long and short-term impact of advertising. So we came across this article or this kind of publication, I guess, from Meta the other day. And it was, again, a study commissioned by Meta that highlighted the importance of long-term advertising effects. So I know that I mentioned, I think when we we're talking about pizzas for podiums, that the brand score actually lifted. And that's very, what you want to see is for that to increase and stay at a high level and not for it to kind of fluctuate as much. So again, this study that Meta commissioned analyzed over 3,500 campaigns and revealed that 60% of the payback came from long-term effects, whereas only 40% came from short-term. So again, I think it's something that brands in particular, I think as marketers, we kind of understand this, that, branding needs to have enough of a focus. But from the brand's perspectives themselves, obviously there's kind of constantly objectives to hit and targets to hit and these type of things. But we really need to ensure that we are putting enough value on the long game, and making sure that the kind of factors of long-term ROI are being really kind of taken in, and that short-term is good, for short bursts of activity, but in general, we really do want to create that brand awareness and that brand element where it's unmistakable when somebody sees, your brand or your packaging or whatever it is. We really need to create that kind of connection with the audience. I came across a nice brief from the first ever Coca-Cola bottle, and the brief was, it needs to be recognizable in the dark or if it's broken on the floor. And I think like the Coke bottle pretty much hasn't changed across the past 100 years. And I think anybody, if you had your eyes closed, could probably distinguish a glass Coca-Cola bottle. So those type of long-term impacts are kind of really what we want to do. And TV has a remarkably powerful way of getting across brands, but digital channels also can be brand building channels too. And I think that's something that we really need to get across to the people that we're working with as well.
I absolutely love that, Luke. Lastly, we always finish up on this last question. I could talk to you all day, honestly, but if you could bottle up one personality trait you have yourself that you could pass on to others, what would it be?
I think enthusiasm, to be honest. You know, a lot of skills that people in the industry have are quite, you know, they're kind of across the board. You know, everyone is into the same type of thing. I think when you work in this industry, you have similar interests to your colleagues and whatnot. But enthusiasm is definitely something that I personally think I bring to all the work that I have and all the different clients and companies that I've worked with. It really is vital in the industry we work in. I think no matter what area of digital or marketing in general, I guess, that you work in, you do need to be enthusiastic. And coming from like agency land, where in the space of 5 minutes you can be working across, you know, a number of different industries, different products, working with different personalities and clients, you really have to bring that enthusiasm. So, like, look, let's face it, not every campaign is going to be award winning, but you do need to approach it as if it will be. And I do think that having that enthusiasm and that actual excitement for your work is something that really helps improve not only like team morale and stuff, but it really helps improve the overall performance, because it does show that you kind of care about the work that you're putting in. Like, to be honest, we spend enough time across the day working on all these different campaigns and clients and strategies and type of thing. But if you're not enthusiastic about it, it'll just be kind of a tick the box exercise. And I think you really need to approach everything with a kind of new lens or from a new perspective and see, okay, maybe we haven't tried this before, or, you know, this didn't work in the past, but what if we can approach it from a slightly different angle, you know, things like that. But I think personally, if I could bottle up a piece of myself, it would definitely be enthusiasm. I think it's something that people need to have when we're kind of creating our content and creating our strategies.
Love that. Luke, if anyone wants to touch base with you or learn more about yourself or your company, how can they get in touch?
Yes, you can easily drop me a mail, luke@wiredco.ie, or you can get in touch with us through LinkedIn. So again, if you search Wired Co on LinkedIn, you'll come across our company site. So either one of those, or just myself on LinkedIn, Luke Wilson, you'll find me pretty easily. But yeah, anybody get in touch. Again, I'd love to speak to anyone who wants to learn more about us or what we do, or if you've just any general kind of thoughts on the topics we covered today. Happy to chat to anybody.
Love it. Thank you, Luke, for being on the show.
No problem, Tom. Thanks for having me.